Hi, I'm Rigger. This is your right, and welcome back to RWBY Runs. Before we get started, be sure to like the video if you like it, share anything else would like, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and subscribe if you want to see more. It's finally time to hit Chapter 5, which is Volume 5. Before we start, I need to apologize for this chapter taking so long. Truth be told, Volume 5 is a whole lot of dialogue and a whole lot of moving parts. Frankly, it's quite a challenge to work through. It's not an excuse, it's just how it is, and I'm hoping you all understand. When we last left our story, our heroes had barely escaped their deaths at the hands of the vicious Nuclear. With Ruby all but dead, and an uncoordinated Pyrrha, Ren, and Nora, they tried their best to hold it at bay. One by one, they were, however, taken down. Their only salvation was a brief flash from Ruby's eyes before she lost consciousness completely. But a returning Crow made the save just in time, making good on his promise to bring back help. He rushed back as quick as he could to try and save Ruby's life and arrived just in time to save the others, coordinating with them to take the beast down. Luckily, since he had gone to get medical help, they were able to get Ruby immediate medical assistance. Rushing back to Mistral, an exhausted Crow and distraught Pyrrha shared some thoughts in the hospital, while Ren and Nora waited close by. Everyone else, like Yang, Blake, and Weiss, are all on their previous paths, except for Tyrion, who has yet to reappear. The last thing we saw was Ruby waking up to Pyrrha's relief while Crow was taking a break, and a lost-looking Oscar arriving in the bustling city. We rejoin events at the hospital. Pyrrha is sitting alone in a waiting room, looking through the front doors at Ren and Nora, who are chatting to each other outside. It is quite hard to read the emotions on her face. Her brows furrow and she looks down. She sits stewing in her own emotions. Hey. Ruby's voice snaps her out of her thoughts. Pyrrha puts her thoughts to the back of her mind and stands up to greet her friend. Ruby's left arm is in a sling, and she's still a bit pale and gaunt looking. Are you ready to go? Ruby shrugs, and then winces because she shrugged. All that's left is time to heal, and that happens if I'm in this place or not. Might as well go see the professor. It's why we came, right? Pyrrha nods. Crow sent a message with him, warning him of what happened, but that's as much as we've heard. We've got a place to stay, but honestly, we've been here with you. Ruby smiles. Thanks, Pyrrha. She gives her a quick hug and walks out towards the others. Pyrrha takes one last look around the hospital, and then to the doors, clearly taking a few deep breaths as if calming herself or something. Hey, you coming? Crow pokes his head in through the door. She nods, and after a moment she pulls her travelling cloak around herself, pulling her hood up, and walks out to go with them. The crew walk through Mistral, Crow in the lead alongside Ruby, who is gawking at the sights, her energy seeming to be returning, but wincing occasionally as her sling bounces around. Behind them are Ren and Nora, walking together as Nora is similarly pointing at everything one after the other, while Ren calmly lets himself just be talked at. At the back of the line is the travelling cloaked Pyrrha, hood up and head down, seemingly not interested in the sights. She does not, however, carry her spear in her hand, as she has done basically since the fall of Beacon. They make their way to the academy, with seemingly no one around. They walk through the empty halls, Crow's suspicion mounting. Arriving at the headmaster's door, Crow instructs everyone to draw their weapons. And as we can see in the back, Pyrrha's hand comes up immediately, her collapsed spear seemingly already in hand under her cloak as everyone prepares. Suddenly, Crow kicks in the door and bursts in as the others fan out, weapons up, and Leo topples backwards out of his chair, landing behind his desk. There's a pause as he peeks up over the desk with slight relief, and everyone puts away their weapons. Crow asks why he wasn't waiting for them. Leo says that he forgot. Crow gets mad and brings up the relics. Leo is skeptical of him bringing it up. He says he's passed all the information already, they already know. And Leo recovers quickly, finding his manners. Oh, my apologies. Leonardo Lionheart, at your service. Ruby Rose, Nora Valkyrie, Bly Ren. And there's a pause, which continues, and the others slowly look around expectantly. Pyrrha is stood off to the side with her hood still up. Ruby tilts her head quizzically and nudges her. There's a sigh from under the hood, and she reaches up, slowly taking it down to reveal her face. Pyrrha Nikos, nice to meet you. Lionheart had also sort of frozen in expectation for the introduction, but upon seeing her face, he takes a moment to process, and then realization hits. Pyrrha Nikos, name sounds familiar. Pyrrha Nikos, Pyrrha... Oh, I know you! You're the one from the Vital Fit. Leo, we have things to discuss. Introductions are over. Crow cuts him off and walks up, taking his focus away. We see the others in the back, Nora and Ran, looking across, and RWBY, who is also taking a moment to process what just happened, before spinning to Pyrrha. Pyrrha herself has her head down, half turned away, hugging herself slightly, shying away from the entire room. RWBY gently puts a hand on her arm and she flinches, then relaxes seeing who it is. Seemingly she was lost in her own thoughts for a moment. RWBY leads her over to the small sitting area off to the side, while Crow and Leo continue to talk. When he's questioned about the state of the school, Leo mentions the situation in Mistral. Everyone was watching. Every house in every kingdom. Everyone saw, and he glances over Pyrrha's direction, feeling bad about what he's saying. Everyone saw what happened. The ominous message, Atlesian knights attacking civilians, and then nothing. He continues his speech about losing huntsmen, including from their school. In the background we see Nora and Ran having joined RWBY, crowding around Pyrrha. She's sitting with her face buried in her arms. RWBY is hugging Pyrrha's shoulder with her one good arm, and Nora is crouched resting her hands on Pyrrha's legs. And Ran is standing off to the other side with one hand on her other shoulder for support. It's almost as if the three of them were physically holding her together to stop her shattering into pieces. She isn't crying, just sitting in silence. From there, however, the conversation continues as usual, conveying all the information we need to know about how the vaults work, about what happened to Spring, about them ending up with Raven, etc., etc. And when they're all done, the group quietly leaves. Crow heads off to drink, and the others just head to the house to rest. Pyrrha once again covering up and hiding her face as they leave into the streets. Dr. Watts enters to find Leo at his desk and takes him to the Seagram where Salem appears. He says they've located Spring, and then she compliments Arthur. As much as I'd love to take credit, ma'am, I'm afraid I can't. You could say, little birdie told us. Explain. Crow Bronwyn arrived at the academy today. He believes Spring has taken up residence with his sister's tribe. Is the girl with him? Yes, Miss Rose was in attendance. So, it appears Tyrion failed. Well, apparently so. They certainly had a run-in with him. He checks his scroll, bringing up a document. I admit I was curious myself, so I took the liberty of looking into it. Miss Rose was released from medical care only today after a near-fatal venom wound. Salem taps her chin, thinking. If you don't mind me asking, ma'am, should we assume the worst? I find it difficult to believe they killed him. But with Crow Bronwyn, perhaps. I will look into it. For now, you are to meet up with Cinder and convince Raven Bronwyn that it is in the best interest of her and her tribe to cooperate. The scene then resumes as it usually does, with Cinder heading off after the conversation to go to Raven, and Watts heading off to join her. However, Watts does not receive instruction to return back to Salem to heal Tyrion, because he isn't there. Back at the house, RWBY is resting. Nora, Ran, and Pyrrha are just sitting in silence. The ticking clock is all that can be heard for several long moments. You know that no one blames you, right? I'm sure Lionheart didn't mean to... And no one thinks it was your fault. Pyrrha's hands clench the cushion on the edge of the couch she's sitting on, keeping her head down. You can't speak for everyone. The last thing they saw was me. And Penny. My mistake. That's not fair on yourself, No, it's not fair, but it's true. I think if there's one thing we've all learned, it's that the world isn't fair. But that doesn't mean it's not still real. You know you can talk to us, right? Can I? And she slowly looks over to Ren, who holds her gaze for a moment and then looks down. Now seems to be the first time Nora's really noticing there's been something going on here, and she looks back and forth between them, concerned. What's going on? Of course you can talk with us. We're a team, remember? There's another long silence. Ren sighs. We're not much of a team, as it stands. Nora now looks really concerned. What are you talking about? He's right. We're not. Nora is at a total loss, just staring at Pyrrha. You cannot be serious. Just because we got beaten, we're not a team? We just have more to learn. We didn't lose because of lack of skill, indicating to Pyrrha as if to highlight how skilled they are. We lost because we didn't have a leader. Without Jaune, without RWBY, we were powerless. If Crow hadn't come when he did, we would be dead. We should be dead. Okay, so we need a leader. Who wants to be it? Huh? She looks back and forth between the two of them, who are both looking down. She seems to try and lift their spirits. I can be leader. Our first mission? Dinner. She points dramatically and pauses, and sees it really didn't work sitting back down. She sighs. Look, you guys, okay, we need a leader. We can work on it. That doesn't mean it's not a team. We're together. We're family. Even if we don't know what to do, we're still fighting together. Fighting for each other. No matter the rest of it, that's still true. When we lost Jaune, we lost more than a leader. He was family to all of us. So, we can't lose each other too. That's not what he'd want for us. A heart. The other two look over curiously. Pyrrha is staring at the floor, unwilling to look up and on the verge of tears. He was our heart, and it's gone. That's what we lost. Ren and Nora share a look of understanding, and move over to sit either side of Pyrrha. You're right, but in time, I know we'll find it again. Where would we possibly find... The three snap to attention, looking at the door. Carefully, Ren gets up and moves over to the door, curious who would be knocking as Crow would just let himself in, leaving Nora to comfort Pyrrha. He slowly opens it to reveal a small farm boy? Can I help you? Yeah, is there a Ruby Rose here? Pyrrha and Nora stand up, their emotions suddenly locked away behind a wall of concern and concentration. Why? And a drunk Crow walks in, collapsing on the couch. RWBY comes out, one arm still in a sling. He says he's Ozpin, everyone is confused. Cut away. At this point, I'm only cutting away to break up the scene and give updates, which is still pretty much everything is on track. I know people wanted me to change what happened with Sienna or with Raven, but functionally this works in that there's nothing that happened to either of the characters that's different. That means they would approach the situations different, so nothing has changed. I'll cover these events when I need to, but if I don't, for brevity, just there's nothing changed, nothing affects them. So for now, Blake and everyone is on track. We return after that well-placed scene break to Oscar explaining what and who he is. While Oscar gives his explanations and is nervous around RWBY and the others, Pyrrha is notably at the back of the pack, in thought until the subject of training comes up. Miss Nikos. Ozpin looks down slightly as if guilty. I understand that we left on some odd terms after the circumstances. After what happened that night, and what you must all have been through since, I understand if you have some reservations. Pyrrha squints a little, not expecting this approach. If I'm honest, sir, I think I'm still coming to terms with all of this. An entirely fair point. What I wanted to say is that despite even your outstanding skills, Miss Nikos, we must all continue to improve. We all need to work together if we're going to face Salem's forces. But while I have the restrictions of Oscar's body, I wish to ask you a favor. I would like you to assist me in running drills with everyone. Oh, of course. But Pyrrha then turns to RWBY. How is it? And she motions to RWBY's arm. With a grunt of discomfort, she takes the sling off. It's not like it's broken or anything, but it still hurts and it's a bit numb. The only parts of it I can feel are parts that hurt. But it'll be alright soon enough. This may be a blessing in disguise. While you recover, you can train in hand-to-hand combat and with one-handed weapons. You never know when it could come in useful, and the exercise will help restore your arm. Thank you, students. Ozpin then does his display, saying he'll be teaching them, and Oscar falls over, etc. Cut to later. Oscar is sitting alone in his room, deep in thought and looking at his own hands. There's a knock on his door. Hello. The door opens and Pyrrha peeks her head in. Excuse me, do you mind? Oh, no, come in. She enters and pulls up a wooden chair that was at a desk to sit and face him. The introductions were over very fast. I'm Pyrrha. Okay? She sits quietly for a few moments and sighs. Well, Oscar, I just wanted to say how brave you are. I know this is out of nowhere, and you don't know me, but for someone your age, with no training, to be put in whatever this situation is, and coming here, it's commendable. While Oscar may not know it, there's a good chance this is the longest string of words that Pyrrha has put together since leaving Beacon. He is, however, very lost at what's happening, but he nods. Sure. Thank you? Pyrrha is clearly struggling to say what she's actually trying to say. I don't want to scare you, Oscar, but this is dangerous. Please, if something happens, there's no shame in hiding. You didn't ask for this. And even those of us that did train for it don't always make it out. And there is a brief, very hard expression that flashes over her eyes for just a moment before they soften again. Just please, look after yourself. If anything happens, we will protect you. She smiles meekly at him, but he seems very confused and worried at this person he's just met. She sighs again. I'm sorry for disturbing you. Sleep well. She gets up, cutting her losses and making to leave. No, wait. She freezes halfway out the door. Look, I'm very new to, all of this. I don't really know what to say, but, thank you. Really, I appreciate it. She holds the door for a moment, then nods and leaves, closing it behind her. Oscar then contemplates for a few long seconds. Can I ask you a question? You said earlier she was outstanding. If she's so scared of our enemy, what chance do I have? While our enemies are fierce, they are not what she's afraid of. The fear in her eyes is not for herself or of an opponent, but for you. There is no sword or enemy that can put that look in someone's eyes. It's not a fear of danger, but a fear of loss. Miss Nikos was one of the brightest and most radiant people I have ever met, but that brightness has been overshadowed by the clouds of all that she has lost, and all that she still fears to lose. How sad. I hope she can return to being that person one day. As do I. While nothing major changes, it should be stated that over at Raven's camp, once Yang arrives, things do happen slightly differently. Once they have their stare down, an argument and Raven orders Yang taken away, the same events occur as she unknowingly knocks down the thug that hits the screen, preventing her from seeing Weiss, who then breaks out and joins her. Functionally, everything is identical. But once Raven stands down and the crowd disperses and she enters her tent, and the dangers subside, something slightly different happens. Turning to Weiss, Yang makes to apologize, and Weiss drops everything to hug her. But it's not a quiet embrace. Yang smiles sweetly holding Weiss, but notices she is trembling. Then she sniffs, and it becomes clear that Weiss is sobbing into Yang's shoulder. She's physically trembling and shaking in Yang's arms and can't even choke out any words that she wants to say. After several long moments, Weiss finally finds the strength to take a step back, wiping her eyes and in vain trying to recover her appearance. Weiss, are you okay? She sniffs back more tears and nods again. Yeah, After a pause, she takes 2 steps forward and almost slumps against Yang. Not jumping onto her shoulder, more just laying her head against Yang's chest. I thought you were all gone. Thank you. Yang seems a little taken aback by this kind of response from the Weiss she knew, but she just lets her have this moment as she really seems to be needing the comfort, that much is clear. After another long pause, Weiss does recover, collecting herself, and they head off into Raven's tent where things will continue, as usual. Back at the house, training has begun. Ozpin leads the others through training drills in hand-to-hand combat. It's quite similar to the regular timeline in that fashion, however it's not just Ozpin. Pyrrha also is leading drills. She does train alongside the others, she is not above needing to grow, but while Ozpin can't continuously control Oscar, and since training Oscar's body will help him in combat anyway, Pyrrha takes over when Ozpin no longer can, or when they need to split up into more groups so everyone can continue training. And the extra hard work from training herself and training others will also help Pyrrha improve. Since they anticipate now that they will be fighting more battles like with Tyrion, not just against Grimm but against other one-on-one opponents, her expertise and skill in dueling will come in very handy for everybody. She helps Ruby train her arm, she helps show Ruby how to punch, she helps show Oscar how to punch and fight. She helps Nora get faster at swinging a hammer in one-on-one combat. And she even spars to help Ran increase his speed even more. Not to mention they provide a wide variety of fighting styles for Pyrrha to practice against herself. However, when it came to weapons drills, no one could help but notice something quite obvious. The first big example was when Pyrrha squared up against Ruby to try and help her. Crescent Rose, of course, was too big to be used one-handed, so they needed to work on recovering Ruby's wounded arm. Initially, Pyrrha happily hands over her spear, collapsed into its shortsword form. However, after a moment she pauses. "Oh, excuse me, just a moment." And she heads off to the dojo attached to the building, returning with a basic shortsword from the rack for herself to use. Everyone present couldn't help but notice Jaune's sword sitting on her hip, but she, Pyrrha, seems to be actively ignoring it. Everyone present seemed to, for whatever reason, decide not to mention it, but it'd be a lie to say that they all didn't take note, and perhaps share a quick glance amongst themselves. However, soon enough she put up the sword and began dueling with Ruby, basic blocking and striking, forcing Ruby to use her sore arm, and also training her to anticipate strikes and unexpected kicks that will carry over into her hand-to-hand as well as help her in fighting people who use such weapons. Ruby clearly struggled at first, but repeated sessions saw her get more proficient with everything, from strikes to single-handed weapons and just overall hand-to-hand as the discomfort in her arm lessened. With Pyrrha helping out, the restriction that was on the others usually, being Ozpin's time in control and the limitations of Oscar's body, were less of a factor as Pyrrha can take over and she will continue training everyone even when he couldn't continue. The group train day in and day out, slowly getting closer knit as they get to know each other, especially with Oscar. And they do steadily get better as they wait for Crow to gather allies. A while later, Crow is pondering his lack of discovery. Every name he searched for was missing, on a mission far longer than usual, or simply not around. His suspicions are piqued. Frustrated, he grunts and ponders the situation, whilst out on the balcony. Suddenly, he's shocked to attention as he hears the all-too-familiar sound of Raven's portal opening behind him. With a start, he spins, ready for anything. Or so he thought, as a rumbling yellow motorcycle emerges from the portal. And that's where we have to leave it for today. Lots of talking, lots more to cover. Volume 5 is a monster. But for now, we have a small insight into perhaps why Pyrrha seems unwilling to let go of her cloak. We have some minor but notably different situations with the villains. We have the introduction of the newest team member in young Oscar. Team Juniper seems to be going through some internal issues, but Pyrrha is around to significantly help with everyone's training. And now, 2 of the estranged members of Team RWBY are about to return. How will the reunion go? What will the villains do now? How will what's left of Team Juniper cope? And what's really on Pyrrha's mind that she isn't saying? Find out more next time. Until then, thank you for your continued support with RWBY Runs. Really, it means a lot to me, and I apologize again at how slow these are to make sometimes. But I hope you enjoyed. My name is Rigger. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope I did alright.